I would like to reconvene this board meeting, please. Could I have someone approve the minutes?
I make a motion we approve the minutes of our last meeting.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
As unanimous, Vicki. Thank you. I would like to say that the board will hear an update of the proposed HR policies and procedures, but will not take any action this evening. The presentation of the updates are being delivered by our attorney, Deb Roden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Try to give you a big picture overview of your human resources changes that occur in policy and procedure. 6.1 is your policy, which addresses your employment categories, employee categories, generally speaking. What we've done is we have tried to make sure that we have really defined who legacy employees are. So your existing folks.
Can I get a copy of whatever you're talking about?
Are there copies present?
And can you please refer to the page number or whatever so I can follow through?
6.1.
6.1.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if anybody else would like a copy, there are extra.
Oh, there are more copies up here at Vicki's table.
Then I'll give everyone a minute to grab that in case you'd like to grab it.
Thank you, Vicki, for doing that. I appreciate it. Mohammed's taking them all. No, I'm kidding.
Madam Chair,
Brenda, did you speak to me?
yes, I have a question for Deb, if that's, may I ask Deb?
Yes, you may.
Deb, the copies the board has had some yellow highlighted portions. Are those the portions of the policies that are being changed?
Great question, Madam Chair, through you. Trustee Little, they are not the only pieces that have been changed. What that is we have made multiple revisions to the policies and procedures, mostly in light of the forums we've held. So the highlights you see now are the most recent changes. There were changes made in January and again in February. The main crux of those changes are outlined for you on your reference table, but the highlight doesn't include all of them. So I don't want to mislead you into thinking that any change has been highlighted.
Okay, so these are just the most recent changes, Deb, as a result of the forums that you had?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Brenda.
All right, so turning back to 6.1, again, our first piece of business was to make sure we really made clear who are legacy employees. And that came as a response of a lot of feedback that there was confusion and concern about how we were categorizing them or identifying them. So that's a major piece you'll see in 6.1, particularly in the procedure, obviously, of that piece. Making clear that your existing professionals, your existing, I guess professionals are actually called your ESS folks right now, your existing faculty, they're all considered what's called legacy employees. Where one of the major shifts occurs is in people who will be hired after the effective date of these items. And for those folks, your professionals who are hired after the date of the policies coming into place, they will be contracted on an annual basis. That's the same way you currently treat your administrators. Your administrators will also stay on annual contracts. Your folks who are now considered classified staff would have at-will status. And then you have your faculty split into two groups. You have your, what was previously called initial faculty, they're called provisional faculty. They would be receiving annual contracts. And at the start of their fourth year, and Joe, please correct me if I'm missing the year, fourth year they could apply to become continuing contract faculty. That changes a difference of 1 year in the amount of time they serve before they then apply for your continuing contract status. 6.1.2 is a policy that just makes clear how the college is going to hire and recruit, and some procedures to make sure that we're doing that in a way that makes sense, and that so that supervisors, people who have a job opening come up, have a better understanding of how they're going to go through that process. 6.1.3 talks about how your existing folks will receive information about a contract. Your folks who were on a contract that had an end date to it, your current policy says they'll get notice by February 28th. The change to that is 3 months prior to that individual's contract date conclusion is the date they would be notified, whether or not they'd be offered a new contract or if their contract would then just terminate at the end of the contract duration. And then 6.1.4 simply tries to delineate a little bit better of how termination occurs and what supervisors need to do. So for example, making sure they get back any LCCC property, those kinds of things. One other change that we made to this procedure, and I believe it was either before or after we met with Staff Senate, was to make sure that even for at-will folks, prior to their termination, that recommendation from their supervisor would go up the chain. It would go up to that person's supervisor, as well as a consultation with Human Resources. 6.2 and 6.3 have to do with discrimination and harassment. One is specific to sexual harassment, and the goal there was to make sure we complied with Title IX. And then the other harassment policy was just tightening up, making sure we were providing clear guidance on how someone would initiate that process and what it would look like. 6.4 is employee benefits. We just, for the most part, provide an overview of what those benefits generally are for employees and the criteria for what eligibility looks like, and oftentimes that's set by the provider of the benefit rather than the college. 6.5, your FMLA, simply outlines Family Medical Leave Act. We've put in the procedure under that statute. Each employer can pick certain things. For example, are we going to use a calendar year or a rolling year? So we've put in procedure the way that this college will implement those areas where it has choice. 6.6 is leaves, and we've broken that down to a few sub-pieces, so paid leaves, other types of leaves, to sort of make clear which types of leave fall in which category. One change there is that vacation leave will now be earned as it's accrued rather than fronted at the beginning of each year. One other change to leaves, and it's in 6.6.3, instead of the college having a sick leave bank, that has been changed to where there's now a donated leave procedure. And what that really does is give the employee the say-so in when and how any of their earned and accrued leave can be donated to someone else, rather than having the college determine that, or the college carry a liability where leave is concerned. 6.8 is an employee grievance policy. This was sort of interspersed in other places, but we wanted to make it clear and try to define for folks what a grievance really would look like, what really is a grievable offense, and then set out a procedure for how someone could then bring that forward and have that matter resolved. For the most part, the person who would be making any decisions with regard to that is the supervisor over the respondent, or the person who the complaint has been made against. And the idea of that is that that person is in the best position to effectuate change or any type of potentially discipline, but really just effectuate change. They're in the best position to do that. There's an appeal process through that as well. 6.9 is the reduction in force procedure. Again, the change here is it would come out of a rule and be placed in policy and procedure. The length of, I guess, the severance pay for that piece has changed from 85 days to a breakdown depending on how long you have been employed with the college. And then it's made clear that for new employees, non-legacy folks, new folks, certain things may or may not apply to them in RIF. So for example, a new person hired who would be classified staff, who's then considered at will, would not be entitled to severance under the new RIF policy and procedure. So really that delineation comes on folks who have a contract with the college and those who don't. And then 6.10 is an employee discipline process. Again, this comes out of rule and moves to policy and procedure. We, based on comment from forums, we've made sure that all the timelines are at least now consistent. There are 7 business days because we had a lot of feedback on, this is confusing. Do I have 5 days or 10 days? And it's different depending on which procedure I'm under, so we've made them consistent throughout. We've actually added appeal steps to the employees versus what exists currently. So in the case of a termination, an employee would have 3 steps to their appeal prior to any matter moving then to a contested case. That is your broad overview of your policy and procedures.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I
Please.
can, just
Dr.
to go back and hit some of the points. One of the things that we tried to do within this reference table for you was to highlight the things that have changed since you saw the first iteration of them and discussed them at your board retreat on January 24th. We also tried to highlight some of the major key considerations for you to look at with each of these changes and updates. And just to reiterate what your council had mentioned, many of these changes were a result of the feedback that we've received either online or through the forums, and really trying to find and rectify some of those things. Trying to also find ways to make sure that language is clear and where there's that inconsistency, provide greater clarity, and to do some of that. Are they perfect in this draft? No, and I would even argue that from a language standpoint or even from an implementation standpoint, when we get to the point of approval, they may still be tweaked as we move through, and that's one of the things we find with policy and procedure. As you start to apply them, you work with them and you use them and you figure out where they can be improved. But there have been some significant changes, and I just wanted to point those out. Under 6.1.1, which is the employment general procedure, probably one of the biggest pieces of feedback and concern that we heard from faculty from the first draft pertained to the implication that those folks with the assumed continuing contract or have continuing contract letters on file, that we were moving away from giving them that ongoing employment relationship, that we were saying, no, because we've given annual contracts, it's going to be an annual contract. That, in conjunction with the tie to the proposed faculty promotion and ranking system that also had contract terms without having any type of delineation or details behind those, brought a lot of concern. And so one of the things I want to point out that you'll find in this update is that we've clarified that. We've now taken the ranking and promotion piece out of this aspect and out of the contractual relationship. Doesn't mean we're still not interested in moving in that direction. And in fact, I'd say we're very interested, but it doesn't tie it to the contractual relationship. So that has been moved out. It clearly delineates that those faculty that have continuing contract or have been here for more than their 4 consecutive years, and even those that are in their 3rd year and have already applied for continuing contract will be treated as such and will have that ongoing employment relationship. So that was a big thing. There was concern over the denotation of a 9-month contract period for faculty. The updates basically removed that and referenced the academic affairs policy on workload, which denotes the number of duty days. And as that changes, this doesn't have to be changed to say this is what the duty days are or aren't. And then, as Deb pointed out, really clarified or provided extensive language to try to clarify who would be legacy employees. So in some cases, there are certain property interests that current employees have that employees hired after the approval of these policies and procedures would not. And so we wanted to make sure we said these are the people that have those. These are the legacy employees. So there's extensive language in there trying to clarify who are legacy employees. And then we reference this definition throughout the policies and procedures so that when we say a legacy employee is or isn't included in this consideration, they can reference this to say, well, who's a legacy employee and how is it defined and all of that good stuff. jump down here to 6.1.3, which is the employment of existing or non-vacant positions. There was a lot of concern. We put in a process for administrative transfer. One of the things that hasn't been very flexible in our current format is our ability to consider the transfer of existing positions under a variety of circumstances. Even the clarity in how, under the current RIF rule, if we were to RIF somebody, how we would transfer employees and do those types of things. When we proposed that in your original, and you may remember at your retreat, there was concern expressed about having an administrative transfer program that may allow me or an administrator to basically promote people and to do that. We clarified that language and tried to make it clear that where those transfers would take effect, it would be a lateral movement and would not equate, a lateral or a downward movement would not equate into a promotion, so that there wasn't that that implication or even that opportunity for somebody to say, this is an opportunity for me to bypass competitive searches and actually advance people through an administrative transfer to a promotion level. Let's see, I say that one. The employee separation piece, there's a couple of things that we tried to clarify there in pertaining to how this is impacts or will be applied towards those new employees who would be in an at-will employment relationship. And specifically, I want to restate what Deb said. One of the concerns we've heard is that there's the fear that if there are poor managers or if an employee shows up wearing the wrong colored shirt, that their supervisor could on the spot basically say you're fired and then inform his or her supervisor and HR as to that result. We've changed that this requires a manager to basically consult with and work with his or her supervisor as well as HR before terminating or separating an at-will employee. And that ensures that there are at least two other individuals who are involved with that conversation and that decision. And I think that is an important change. Make sure I'm going the right way here. Employee benefits. This one is more of a
What number is that, Joe?
6.4P, employee benefits. This one is really more of a clerical type of thing, but there's it may look like there's a significant change in this update. One of the things that we changed from the one you saw on January 24th, we had a lot of very detailed information about the current benefit structure. Many of those benefits are dictated or determined by agencies, organizations, and the state outside of our control. And instead of having something in policy and procedure in this case, that we would have to update every time a benefits provider changed for your dental plan or something like that, we've simplified that and basically will refer to an employee benefits handbook, which is what we have now, that we can update as providers change and things like that. Let's see. Another one that didn't seem significant but was really good feedback from a forum and under the leaves of absence. We had some language in the originals that required sort of a traditional and one of our older approaches to authorization. With the implementation of our electronic timekeeping system for classified staff, that's actually the appropriate place for them to record and track and do leave through there. And so we've cleaned that up to recognize the changes in the current practice. 6.6.3, again, the sick leave bank. This is a significant change. We're eliminating the sick leave bank program. For those of you, just as a reminder, historically, we already limit the number of sick leave days that employees can earn, as well as vacation leave days. Historically, what we've done is if once you've hit that threshold, we still keep calculating days earned and kept calculating, and then the college would just grab them and stick them into the sick leave bank. And so we had basically a benefit liability that was sitting out there that we had already said doesn't exist because employees stop accruing it at a certain point, but yet we're recognizing and capturing it and then ultimately may have to fund it if that sick leave bank was allocated. The bank was used by very few individuals, and it took the person who earned the benefit out of the conversation. This move is much more reflective, I think, of what you'll find with some of the state and hospital and other programs in terms of leave donation. It allows the employee to actually donate their leave to a good cause in their eyes. So I think that's an important change. Let me see if there's any others. One other thing under the grievance piece, I just want to denote and talk about one of the key considerations, which is actually trying to put in administrative appeals. You'll find with it grievance and discipline, and so your discipline policy, which is 6.8 P and procedure, well, the grievance, we've built in additional appeal processes and clarified appeal steps and how that works. Those are things that don't exist right now, and so we've tried to build in those sort of progressive discipline and appeals processes so that we know we're providing good guidance to managers as well as to employees on how we are going to work through challenging situations with employees, whether it's a grievance or helping coach them. We've tried to clarify business days and duration. There was concern expressed about having some policies and procedures state that you have to do this within 5 days, some state that you have to do this within 10 days or 7 days. We've tried to create consistency throughout these where there's a 7 business day function for the most part for actionable periods and things like that. And so I think that moves us in a direction based on a lot of the comments that we received, that like shifting the request for an administrative hearing from 10 days to 5 days, moving that to 7 days, and some of the consistent things. It gets people knowing that this is sort of the time frame in which I have to act or which I can expect an action to come back to me. The reduction in force policy and procedure, one of the things that we heard considerable feedback on was you've removed any opportunity for an employee to come back should the college recreate the position and to do that. And so we've actually added in a recall section here that puts parameters if the college were to RIF a position and within a year create that position again, that we would actually go through a recall process so that if those people who were RIF'd, all of a sudden that position's there again, we'd call them in sequential order. Essentially getting at the concern that we may decide to, because we don't want to move down a discipline or a due process route, decide to RIF a program or a service, wait for a while, and then restate it again so that we could hire somebody else. This actually provides a recall mechanism within that year if we were to decide to just restart that or have that open again and bring those back. So that was one of the changes that we've added. I think those are the big ones that were the clear updates to today. And instead of taking any more time in discussing them, I would really love to hear your conversation and give you the opportunity to have dialogue and discourse around the updates.
Madam Chair?
Just one moment, please, Don. You will be the first person I call on. This is the time for the board to have discussion with our attorney and with our president. So, in so saying, Don, please speak.
Madam Chair, I'd like to clarify, I think, an impression that appears to be developing here, or has developed over a period of time, that the board is approving procedures. We're not approving procedures. What we're doing here is we're approving only the employment policy and looking at the chapters 1, 2, and 3. When I asked back a while back, how come we're looking at all of these employment procedure changes, it was the president's response, and rightfully, that because of the magnitude of the changes, of trying to reduce ambiguity and increase clarity and stay within the various legal aspects of statutory law, that it was felt that it should be reviewed by us. And I think that's good. In fact, there's an impression, just the way it's listed on our agenda, item 3, consideration of proposed changes. Actually, it's a review of the proposed changes rather than a consideration of them. I think it's great that we're given the opportunity to hear all of the employees' responses. I had the opportunity to attend the Faculty Senate Forum, the Staff Senate Forum, one other, the Education Association Forum, and learned a lot about the concerns. And to me, it appears that there's been a good deal of response to many of those concerns. There may be some philosophical differences that are coming up between the administration and the employees, but there's been a very legitimate, transparent approach to these changes. So my comment Madam Chair, is that I hope that it clears up that we are not approving procedures. We're going to have a couple of changes in the policy as it was presented to us with the yellow markings. And we will be looking at the chapters 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you very much, Don. Any comments?
Madam Chair,
Dr. Kilby?
I'd like to just to clarify a couple of things and ask our attorney about these. But there's a suggestion that all of the rules that we're operating under now have been in place for basically 25 years. And it seems to me that before January 2010, before we promulgated rules, in other words, that we didn't actually have any rules that we operated under. It was entirely policy and procedures. Is that true or not true? Do you know?
Madam Chair, through you, Trustee Kilty, I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be happy to figure it out for you.
Thank you.
Let me ask you another question then. Mr. Hacker tonight, in speaking to the board, suggested that if we remove rules before we have the policies and procedures in place, that will lead to chaos. But isn't it also true that if we have policies and procedures in place that conflict with rules, that will also lead to chaos?
Madam Chair, through you, Trustee Kilty, I think that is accurate, that we need to make sure we are putting them in place in time that makes sense. And that's part of the impetus for these changes, that you already have a lot of discrepancies between rule and policy and procedure, and that's part of what we're trying to clean up with this change. But yes, certainly, we don't want to put in place policy and procedure which would conflict with your existing rule either. Both ways is accurate.
And Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, if I may, just again for clarification, we are not suggesting, and I am not recommending to you that you do these separately. As I know you know, we're having the public hearing, the feedback tonight. You'll go through a first reading of the formal first reading of the policies and procedure, the policies at your next meeting, and then your second reading at the following meeting, and take action on all of them at the same time. At that time, should the procedures route through College Council and the internal process and all of those things, they will be poised to also be enacted exactly at that same time, so that we don't have that chaos that you're suggesting.
I have
Yes,
some
I know.
further questions. For the adoption of these policies and procedures, there's no formal period for gathering commentary? Is there, such as in the promulgation of rules, there are 45-day comment periods? But we don't have that in policies and procedures, do we?
Madam Chair, through you, I do not believe you have any official time frame within which you must take action or consider these things or leave them open. What the college has done, I think as Trustee Erickson points out, is provided a lot of transparency and requested comment through Eagle's Eye and having forums so that we do get constructive feedback and can make changes. But no, I don't believe you're operating under any obligation to a specified time period within which you must keep them open.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, for further clarification, you have one board procedure at this point, where you have a procedure that you actually review and approve, and that deals with our policy and procedure on policy and procedure development. And while it doesn't dictate the time frames for notification and things like that, it does include aspects of continued consultative feedback, vetting, and movement through both administrative as well as the shared governance aspects, College Council of the campus. And so there are pieces that we move through very structurally when we advance both procedure and policy. But I don't believe that there is any specific time frame that binds us or suggests we do it for this long.
Another question. Back when we were promulgating the rules, I remember there was a discussion one night about revisions to the rules and so forth, and what would trigger another 45-day comment period. And it seemed to me at the time that people said that the change had to be substantive before one really had to open up another 45-day comment period. And in this particular case here, it sounds like we're going to give people the amended rules and allow some time period, or at least what I'm hearing is that we're going to allow some time period for people to comment on these amended rules. But at some point, we can't just continue more and more comment periods. At some point, we're gonna get down to such small rule changes that we can consider them non-substantive.
Madam Chair, through you, Trustee Kilty, I believe that would be accurate,
Not
yes.
rule changes, but amendments to procedures is what I really meant to say.
Are you talking about, sorry, rules or procedures? Now you've lost me.
Okay, I'm talking about the procedures here, because that's what people are commenting on.
Oh, I see. So your question, let me make sure I understand your question. Your question is, do you have to then hold another 45-day or comment period as to your procedure?
Yeah, well, whatever, we've already established that there's not really a formal time period, but we're giving people time to comment on these things.
Right.
But at some point, we'll get down to, say, non-substantive changes that might be made to these procedures, and do we reach a point where finally it doesn't make sense to gather more commentary on these small changes to the procedures?
I think that would,
What
that
I'm
would
trying to
be
say is,
accurate.
do we see an end to this process at some point?
Yes, and certainly, because the matters will be coming before you as a board again, those are obviously recognized time periods for changes to be, for example, early on, you would expect some substantive changes. As we progress further along, you would expect fewer and fewer of those and perhaps just grammatical or clerical changes. But yes, and that's the point of the process. The point is to get the feedback and to make changes as we see fit during this time period. But certainly, yes, it will come to an end. The board will take formal action one way or the other on the matter, and that will conclude it.
Madam Chair, can I come back to my previous comments? Because I still think we need to clarify the difference between rules and procedures. We don't need to have a specified period of time for amendments to the procedures. We do to the rules. We need to have specified responses to what we can do under the law when we make a change to a rule. And I believe I'm speaking correctly on that.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty and Trustee Erickson, so yes, there's three different aspects moving through, and I appreciate your continued clarification of the difference between rules, policy, and procedure. I do think those are important. The question that I think that arose from the EA's legal counsel's perspective, I don't want to put words in his mouth, was whether or not, because of the changes in your proposed changes to rule chapter number 1, whether or not that would necessitate another 45-day notice period and then another public hearing. And I think that's one of the things Dr. Kilty may be asking about is what's substantive with doing that. I'm not positive on this, but I am under the impression, and maybe Trustee Little could clarify this too, even though you held 2 public hearings because of changes in the rules when they were first promulgated 3 years ago, my understanding is even after your last public hearing, there were some tweaks to the rules before they were finalized. Or did you have your last public hearing and actually act on those rules at that public hearing? You don't have to be put on the spot. We'll research that, but I guess the point is that one of the things we'll have to clarify is, do we continue to perpetuate the 45-day notification period, the hearing, until we get it absolutely perfect? And if that's the case, and then what's the use of having the last public hearing where you get public comment if you approve on the things as they exist, other than to possibly hear that everybody loves it? So we'll research that and actually find out what the legality of that is. I believe in the current updated chapter 1 of your rules, which hopefully, do we have copies out to people yet? Are they making them, or?
No, I was going to publish the first thing in the morning.
Okay, we'll get them. We were so focused, and my apologies, we were so focused on the policies and procedures. We published all of those, but the updated one, I believe, actually moves in the direction of many of the comments you heard tonight about what we should be reinstating in there. Not to the full extent that the current one exists, but they move in that direction. So I don't know if I would call them substantive, but I don't know that they take us to a direction where there's going to be greater concern than what you already heard tonight in your public comment.
Thank you, Joe. Trustee Mosher?
Madam Chair, and maybe our attorney could help me with this, but given all the discussion that we've had about rules, policies, and procedures, I'd like to throw the pig in the mud bath and see if we can't get a hold of him. And with that respect, I'm saying we held the 45 days or started that process because we wanted to change Chapter 1 and we wanted to remove Chapter 2 and 3.
That is correct.
So the only thing down the road that we need to notice or to pay attention to would be any continued activity on Chapter 1,
Correct.
because 2 and 3, we're just saying those go away unless we were to change our mind.
Correct.
Thank you.
Are there any more board comments? Trustee Kelty?
I'd just like to make a general comment here. People were talking about, and I'm not sure if they were asking why we're repealing some of these rules, or whether they were asking why we've gone through this long and fairly protracted exercise. But let me speak to the last of that. I was a faculty member here for 7 years, and I did a short tour of duty in some almost 20 years ago for 2 years. And as everybody who knows me knows, LCCC drove me crazy. When I was curious about why we were doing something in a particular way, I would go and consult policy and procedure manuals. And I found that almost no 2 policy and procedure manuals in the college said the same thing. They didn't seem to be same revisions. I didn't know if there was a master set of policies and procedures anywhere. It certainly did not match the way that administrators and supervisors treated things. I can tell you for sure that there was one dean who treated FMLA very much like an ad hoc exercise, and all of this was rather bothersome to me. And I think when Joe came on board, he was pretty surprised at what chaos we had among policies and procedures. At the same time, we did not like policy governance any longer. We had seen the problems with policy governance, that it enabled a board to be kept in the dark by an administration at times, or at least the way it was operated on here. So we undertook to rewrite policy and procedures. There was no evil intent here at all. We have just, what we're trying to do is make the college's written word consistent with the way we try to apply it, and make it consistent with other written word throughout the college. And I don't know how many times I can explain that to people, but that's the basis of these changes, or at least that's how they began.
Thank you,
Madam
Dr.
Chair.
Kelty. Are there any more questions? Trustee Mosier?
Yes. Again, trying to get a grip on this. Employment policy 6.1, we have another policy, if we were looking at what? There are 8 of these, I think, or do we have 10 policies that we're looking at? And I'm just separating out policies from procedure. I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like to look at policies and then consider procedures relative to that, where we've kind of lumped everything together, which it's a little uncomfortable for me in terms of trying to keep everything straight. So am I right that we have 10 policies?
You actually have 9 before you. 6.7 is one that we had tabled early on because it needs more work. And there's one other, I think, performance management or evaluations we also tabled. So you have 9 policies before you.
Madam Chair, do we intend, as we go forward then, and to approach each of these 9 policies, not talking procedure, but looking at the policies, and it would be the intent for this board to approve those policies?
I believe that is true.
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, ultimately, that's where we'll get at your ultimate decision point at your first meeting in April. Should we stick with the timeline that's been laid out, would be to approve 9 policies, as well as to take formal action on the repeal of chapters 2 and 3 in your rules and the amendment to chapter 1. Those would be your decision points, your action points, correct?
Okay. We're back. I know chapter 2 and 3 were basically, if we follow through, the action would be to repeal, as you said. But we have those 9 policies we want to look at. And we would be discussing those policies in and of themselves. Then what responsibility, because I heard you say something relative to the procedures. I want to again revisit that a little bit. The policies, I'm not comfortable with them, but with the fact that we're going to go through and look at those and either approve or whatever we might choose to do with that. What about the procedures then? Will we approach that in the same fashion?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, no, from an approval standpoint, the way that they're currently drafted and the way your current policy and procedure on policy and procedure development and approval, those would be vetted through, the administrative procedures would be vetted through the internal process that takes them through development, through the President's Cabinet for a first reading, out to consultative feedback, back to the President's Cabinet for basically changes, confirmation of the feedback, then to College Council for their consideration and ratification. They're the recommending body to me as the President. And then for the procedural standpoint, I would have the final decision factor in the procedural aspects of those. The policies then move on to you with my recommendation. The reason, and I'll reiterate what Trustee Erickson said, because of the scope, the size, and the interrelated nature of this whole package is why we're not trying to separate these out, because your policy statements, and again, in my interpretation, your policy statements are to set direction from board level to do that, and then you've hired me to implement procedures, guidelines, all those other great things to ensure that we comply with those. While you don't approve procedures, I think you have every right at times to say, Joe, show me that you're actually doing things that meet our policy statements. Because of the scope and the magnitude of that, we're trying to do that up front. But when it comes down to the actual decision-making process, the procedures would essentially stop with my office. Now, there is, you know, one of the things that we struggle through with some of these things is where does policy stop and procedure start? And I'm certainly open to conversation and question if there are things that you believe should be. I mean, they're your policy statements, and if there are things that you believe should be in the policy statement that you see in the procedural statement, I'd love to hear that, and we can have that conversation. You know, so it's not a perfect science in exactly where one stops and one begins, and this is our interpretation of how that happens.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer.
Madam Chair, following along with that, then I think the board, it really begins to clarify our role in terms of looking at the policies and these procedures. One, we've taken input. We've heard a great deal about the good and bad and the ugly. Our concern then is how much of that, or whether in our policy we want to provide more direction to the President. Because once we pass those policies, then unless we ask the President to review, we'd like to look at those, and that's really the purvey of the President's office, not ours, right? Okay, so it really behooves us to be very careful about what that policy, the parameters it sets. I've always looked at policies as a broad range of which the manager operates, and that's the way I see Joe operating within that. Procedures tend to be more, this is what you do, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not quite as simple as that, but that's pretty much the way I look at it. So I really feel the policy has to be well designed, otherwise you're going to wind up with problems with your procedures.
Well stated, Ed. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Little.
I've been sitting here and listening to comments and heard Joe's question asking me about the past, and some other folks out here have mentioned the past. And I just want to say I don't remember all of it. Things happen very quickly, but I can remember some. And I would just like to reiterate some of that. A lot of it is in support of what Trustee Kilty mentioned. There was a time when much of what we now have in rule was not in rule. And we went through the struggle with our past administration and with this board about what should be in policy and what should be in rule. At that time, we had an attorney for the President's office, and we had an attorney for the board. who did not always agree on everything. It was the advice of the attorney of the president at that time that more things be put into rule and less things into policy. That was controversial. And the attorney for the board didn't 100% agree with that, not even close to 100% agree. But we came to some kind of a compromise on that. But we always knew, we board members at that time knew that there were some things in rule that probably did not belong in rule, and that should at some point be removed from rule and put back into policy. We knew that at the time. But we were also getting contrary advice to that. And so we wanted to have something concrete in place because, as Kevin mentioned, we were practicing by the policy governance model, which was all written in negative language, was all written, you know, the president shall not make policies that do this and do that. And as Trustee Kilty mentioned, it was causing a lot of what we felt as a board, some things were going on at the college that could have been kept secret from us because of policy governance. So we wanted to change the tone and the purpose of policies here at the college. So we were creating this strange soup, at the same time looking in the future, knowing that some things were going to have to change. Number one being policy governance. Now, anyway, let me say it does not surprise me now that there are some things that are in rule that Deb and her law firm are saying these things really belong in policy. That doesn't surprise me a single bit. As far as the policy stuff is concerned, I want to reiterate what Ed said. We really do need to look at these carefully, because when we voted to no longer use policy governance, we also decided that we were going to be very careful in the ways that we drafted policy for the president and that he would write the procedures underneath those. So that is exactly what we are doing. So there's no real part of this process that's any big surprise. As far as how many times the rules went out for comment, what I remember, Joe, is that if there was substantive changes, that we've set it back out for comment. Not things like commas and periods, but if there were substantive changes, and I don't remember, maybe some folks out there do, but it was in hearing 2 or 3 times because there were substantive changes about some things. Greg might remember because he was a part of all of that. So, but anyway, that's what little bit of the history I remember. So thank you for letting me blurt that out.
And thank you, Brenda. We needed that history lesson, I think. Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? If not, then we will turn this over to the public comment part of the meeting on the updated proposed HR policies and procedures.
Thanks. I'd like to start. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. You are?
First of all, I'm speaking as Robert Van Cleve, Faculty Senate President. And as the President of Faculty Senate, I'm here to report that we are very pleased with the revisions that the second iteration of the HR policies and procedures that have been made as they relate specifically to faculty. And we are very pleased with the willingness of the administration and their lawyers to come and listen to what we have to say and to truly consider what our concerns were. The sense I'm getting from many faculty are that we are moving forward. We met as a faculty senate officially immediately following the forum and decided at the time we would wait until the new revisions were out to decide what our position was going to be. We are meeting Friday, so as far as an official position of Faculty Senate, I can't officially speak for the Senate, but we will certainly continue to work with the President and if there are any concerns that are brought forth from faculty through the Senate, we hope to be able to resolve those amicably and in time. I will point out that The administration has held the Eagle's Eye comment period open until the 10th of March. And so we will have an opportunity for more input after this meeting and after our Senate meeting on Friday. Okay? Now, I'd like to speak as Robert Van Cleve, faculty member, and make it very clear that I'm not speaking as Faculty Senate President at this time. There are two issues that I would like to advocate for personally. The first, on the RIF policy, it used to be, under the rules that you are repealing, an employee had a 2-year period in which if the job opened up again, they could come back. That was originally reduced to nothing, and now compromised on a year. And I would like to think that 2 years would be nice. The reason I say that is the fear and the anxiety out there, and anecdotally, people will tell me, oh yeah, so-and-so was RIF, but it was really they just didn't want to go through the disciplinary policy. I have, I'm not going to speak to that specifically, but the fear out there is that the RIF policy could be interpreted somehow as a way just to get rid of people, wait a year or however long, and start things back up with somebody new. I would hope that this board, and I would hope that future administrations, I know the current administration, this is not their intent. Okay, so please don't take this as a negative comment about the current administration. But as has been pointed out, we have come through a period of an administrator who struck fear in the hearts of many employees at this college, and as such, looking at a lens of an administrator in the future who might use that policy this way, we would hope that a RIF would be a last resort, an absolute last resort, because if we put into place good disciplinary policies, and if we train our supervisors at this college to do their job, we can get rid of people that are bad apples. And I don't think anyone here wants to keep bad employees around. Okay, so if we are at a last resort, and if we have to get rid of an employee who is a good employee, otherwise, let's put him through the disciplinary process and get rid of him that way. But if we have to lay somebody off because of a RIF, what are the chances that within a 2-year period, either the financial emergency would have been relieved, or that the need for a program that we are considering non-essential would now become essential, and we're going to hire somebody back. So I'm arguing that give us the 2 years. That's what we have now, and I would like to see that into the future. The second thing is, as a faculty member, I would like to advocate for our classified staff. I understand now they have due process, and that you are going to put them all at will. And I understand this is going to be future employees. Dr. Schaefer has made the simile on several occasions. I've heard him say, well, giving an employee a long-term contract and due process, the day you hire them is like getting married after a first date. And with all due respect, Joe, if I could carry that simile a little further, if you are in a long-term relationship, shouldn't we not live in sin anymore? And so perhaps a courting period would be more appropriate, and certainly give classified employees a probationary period. Faculty begin 4 years, and giving classified staff a probationary period, but at that point, giving them due process should their services no longer be wanted here at the college. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all your comments. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, as a board member, if may I ask Rob where in the policies he's talking about?
Yeah,
Would you tell me those, Rob?
The RIF is in the RIF procedure, I think it's not in
I
the
caught that,
policy.
so you're talking about the one recall
The
section.
1 year recall,
and you
currently
want
it's 2 years. If you read the
Mhm.
chapter 2 or chapter 3 that you're repealing, it's 2 years.
Okay, and in the proposed policies, it's 1 year.
It's 1 year.
And you want it 2 years.
And I would like it 2 years, yeah, that's what we have now.
And then would you show me the courting part?
Oh, okay, well, there is no courting part, I
Well,
would
where
like
do
a
you,
courting
where do you
part.
want the courting part?
Well, I would like classified staff to have due process after an probationary period. Right now, they are designated totally at will, from the day they come to work or if they've been working here 20 years.
May I ask you a favor? Could you, when you go back, could you come back in a minute or something and say like policy 6.1.2P,
I think it's 6.1,
paragraph F?
6.1.1P, I think it is, Joe, isn't it?
Trustee Little, it's 6.1.1P.
Yeah.
It's under the definition of employee type, and I think specifically what he's referring to is section 5D3, classified staff. It's on page 4 of 8, and that's the language for classified staff are essentially defined. And by, not to put words in Rob's mouth, but what he's recommending that is instead of denoting there that they are at will, noting there that they are entered into an employment agreement with a probationary period of some duration, at which time, and I'm not putting words, during the probationary period, they may be at will, but after that, they would have ongoing property interest. That section does not say that, but is that correct?
That would be a courting period, yes.
All right, so you're talking about like on page 5 of 8, where it says classified staff positions are at will.
That's correct.
And so what you're proposing is classified staff positions are contract with probationary period? No. Are,
Well, there's terminology under faculty that state that when you come as a faculty member, you are given 1-year contracts, at the end of which there's no expectation of continued employment.
right?
That goes for 4 years, and you're allowed to apply for continuing contract after that.
Okay,
Language may be similar to that, saying that the first 4 years of a classified staff's employment would be at will, at which time they will be given due process. If evaluations are adequate.
so instead of classified staff positions are at will, you want language that that mirrors the faculty.
It doesn't necessarily, Chairman.
The concept. Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps you would come
Trustee-
back to the podium and Mr. Hacker would sit down for one
Yeah.
moment, please.
I want to make sure I
guess-
understand, Rob.
I guess I probably should have come up with some wording here. But currently classified staff, are they contracted? They're given property rights the day they come to work.
Joe will speak to that, please.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Trustee Little, and again, I don't want to put words in Rob's mouth.
You couldn't.
Not near as eloquent or succinct as Rob. Right now, the way classified staff, once they're hired, they would have basically a hire into a position. So it's not a contract, it's not a year. You're hired for a position, it's
Right.
hourly, it sets those types of things.
Yeah.
Right now, so under the current legacy classified staff, once we hire you, even though there is contradictive language across the policies and procedures, if you read them now about probationary periods,
Yep.
they essentially have, there is no probationary. The minute they're
Right.
hired, they have full rights to due process based on some of the contradictory language in your rules. They have an ongoing employment relationship. What is proposed is that new classified staff hired after the date of these policies and procedures and all that good stuff being approved would be hired. They'd have the hire into that position, no contract there at will. I believe what Rob is suggesting is that that instead of moving to a move where you hire them and they're at will from day one and into eternity, is you would hire them, they may be at will for a probationary period.
Okay,
after
got
which,
it.
through some review, they would end up having an ongoing relationship with the college that could only be removed because of a reduction in force or for due process. Close?
Okay.
Very close. In
So
fact, I would
they'd be
say
at will for a
exactly.
probationary period and then slip into the relationship that they are in currently. Got it. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Brenda, and Rob, thank you very much. And welcome back, Mr. Hacker. It's your turn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I cannot hear you, please.
Runs a little more this time.
Okay.
Let me address, if I might briefly, the last point that was raised. It is a fairly common practice among governmental entities in the local region, city, state, school district, and so forth, to have classified staff, essentially non-professional instructional staff, non-high-level administrative, go through a probationary period and then obtain a protected status where they have for-cause protection and have the right to a hearing and so forth. It's a very common development, and it's a very reasonable compromise, to be honest, to the radical change of having everyone be at-will employees for eternity, not any different than Walmart or McDonald's, quite frankly. So I think that is a topic that I have not heard discussed in any of the materials I have reviewed. I think it's a good idea to come back to, and I think the various parties will probably be addressing that with the president. If I may get clarification from the board, or perhaps through you, Madam Chairwoman, to the administration or legal counsel, with regard to the policies and procedures that have been identified to the board tonight, can it be explained under procedure 1.2.11P, section 5.0, which stage those policies and procedures are at in the development process?
Deb, would you like to answer that question?
I'm actually going to defer to Joe. Are you talking about what stage they're at through sort of the college council and the consultative feedback process? Is that your question?
Correct.
And I'm going to defer to Joe because I think he's better equipped to answer that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, so all of the policies and procedures are in what your policy and procedure on policy and procedure development denotes as consultative feedback period. So the drafts have come through, and in this case, because of again, I want to repeat this, the size and the magnitude and the complexities of some of these things, we've added in additional steps in these, such as your retreat, additional meetings with the President's Cabinet, and time spent with administrators over these functional areas. But essentially, they've been through the formal step of the first reading by the President's Cabinet, which has said, okay, they're ready to go out. They went out to consultative feedback. That was the first batch that was published under Eagle's Eye and was put out. We've gone through the forums. We've updated those. They are essentially still out into the consultative feedback process on campus. That process will close on March 10th. And we opened it up and elongated that process based on the request, predominantly from Faculty Senate, but Staff Senate also agreed afterwards, yeah, we'd like to do that. From there, they will come back to at least to be checked off by President's Cabinet as being ready to go to the next level. The next stage is to go to College Council, which is the shared governance group on campus. It has representation from all of the major constituencies on campus, and including the President's Cabinet with there as well. That body is a recommending body to me. So the next step then will go to them. I believe, Vicki just nod, March 17th, St. Patty's Day, will go to them. They will discuss the policies and procedures, they will debate those, and ultimately they will take action so that they can advance a recommendation to me. And that recommendation may be, we recommend that the President approve the procedures and pass the policies on as a recommendation to you. The recommendation may be that we like this one, we don't like that one. The recommendation may be we don't like any of them. But it's another opportunity for that discourse and ultimately for campus action on it. After that, they come to me essentially. I look at them and then decide what I pass on to you for policies or what I would want to do and act on for procedural purposes.
Thank you.
I would like to briefly comment on some discussion that was held. I think a question by Dr. Kilty raised as to, in previous years, what was the rule or what was in rule. Having litigated material under that, I'm familiar with that. I have to have a copy of the earlier rule in front of me. Prior to the 2011 revisions, what is now in the 3 chapters of your rules was split essentially between your old rule and policy 4130. And what occurred was then policy 4130 was repealed. Probably 90% of what was in there was put into the other two chapters of the rules, and the remainder part of it, I think, got moved to a different policy. So there have been rules at the college for 25 or more years. Those rules have defined the employee classifications, initial contract faculty, continuing contract faculty. They have given the property rights and property interests to these employees by rule for 25 years. They had the procedures for some of the procedures for discipline, they had RIF rules and so forth. So while some of the policy material went into rule, and I don't want to open the debate about what should be rule or policy, it's not a new creation that the majority of this material was already in the rule for at least since 1989. I would like to comment, I think, on some comments that have been made by Chairpersons Little and Mosher, and I think Dr. Kilty as well, and the President, in terms of what is a policy or a procedure. As I review policy 1.2, I review the procedure that's underneath that defines what is a policy and what is a procedure. It is evident to me that a substantial amount of what is now being set forth as procedure is not consistent with the definition of procedure in your policy and your procedure about making policy and procedure. That rather, procedure is intended to be the implementary steps followed by administration to carry out policy statements of the board. And what has happened is, for example, the definitions of the categories of employees, whether they have protected rights or not, when those rights start or stop, are policy statements. Those aren't the procedures. The procedures are, how do you take them away? How do you have a hearing? How do you give notices? Those are the procedures. Those other things are policies, and those elements need to be in policy that's approved by the board. Those are not items that should be delegated respectfully to the president. In fact, that is a strong echo to me of the previous policy governance practices, where significant decisions about how, far-reaching decisions at a college would be made, not of procedure, but of substantive nature, were delegated to the president. Quite frankly, it's inconsistent with your own policy, and it's an overly broad delegation to the president. And as I briefly mentioned before, I think it raises some concerns about how enforceable some of those procedures would be if the college needed to enforce them in a court of law, having never been formally adopted by the board. And then finally, I would indicate that there are substantial problems existing in these procedures. I alluded to them in the written comments that I submitted, but did not address them with detail. There are issues that are violations of constitutional rights and the grounds for what an employee can be terminated for. There are violations of constitutional rights in the policy, which exists now but has been repeated in the thing, which provide that employees who get married will lose their jobs. I think that's an infringement on, believe it or not, it's in there. The modification has now been made is that the president essentially can overrule that decision if he chooses, but otherwise it occurs. It's an infringement of multiple rights. I mean, I would love to take that lawsuit on someday just for fun, not for a particular client, just because it would be a great exercise in constitutional law. I would not take the lawsuit. Talk about it in a constitutional law class is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
There are serious defects in these procedures that need to be addressed. I have a significant concern that this is all not going to be fully addressed and particularly informed to the board if this matter is rushed through. It sounds like there's going to be a significant time to provide additional comments to have this issue revisited, and I appreciate the board's willingness to do this. I would just caution the board, though, in moving forward in a manner, if you're going to move things out of rules and into policy and into procedure, to make sure not only that everything fits, but that everything has been published and circulated. There are still policies and procedures that are referenced by other policies and procedures that have never been released yet. And so it's very difficult to evaluate what's in there until we see the other materials. So believe it or not, even though this feels like you may have been at it for quite some time, as a practical matter, I think you still are quite a bit off in terms of being able to fully revise these. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hackey. We did not receive your information here until just this evening, so we really haven't had a chance to look it over. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, members of the board, before Mr. Curl makes comments, just a couple of things to denote, and we will look through those things. There are one or two policies, I can think of one essentially, that is referenced in here that is under development. So when we move the contracted, the contract connection to faculty ranking and promotion system, we move that out of here and put that in. And that is something that is currently under development. I do not know that the reference of that policy that's currently under development does anything except for necessitate that we have those things nailed down before the next round of faculty who would apply for continuing contract would do that. So if we failed to do that, it would create ambiguity and not clarity to those people as they would go through the application process. That really isn't any different than what we have right now in terms of the application process. There is that ambiguity and there isn't a defined process. So that, to my knowledge, is the only reference to a policy and procedure that are still under development in what's proposed here. And I'll look through Mr. Hacker's comments as well to see if there's something else. We are going through this, and in fact, we will be having additional legal review of the proposed policies and procedures because we've gotten so close to it. Our attorneys have done a great job, HR has done a great job, but we've gotten so close to these. We are having another review and essentially asking another legal perspective to basically hack in there and see what's wrong with these, what are we missing, what are those pieces of there, where is it clear that we may find ourselves crossway, where is it gray, we had the discussion about the nepotism policy and what happens there, and is the presidential approval enough or not enough? I mean, those are all things that we will be examining, and I'm sure Mr. Hacker's comments probably will give us some additional areas to even focus in on and do that. So I just want to leave with you the impression that we're aware of some of these things, we're looking at it, it's still part of the process as we're going through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. And now we have Bruce Curl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Citizen Bruce Curl at this point, former HR Director here at LCCC. I see some familiar faces. I know Ed and myself worked on these very policies and procedures at one point when he was on the Faculty and Staff Welfare Committee, and I was HR Director. I recognize Dr. Kilty. Not only did the college drive you nuts, Dr. Kilty, but you drove the college nuts. So, just for a point of reference. I remember Don Erickson, when he was the mayor, did an excellent job, Don. And actually, I'm going to sound like an echo chamber. I'm not going to take too much time. We talked about policies and procedures, the difference of both, and you're absolutely correct, Don. When the policies are the governing documents of the college. They're broad statements adopted by the governing entity of the college, which is the Board of Trustees in this case, and they are to provide basic principles which the college administration is supposed to apply their procedures. And of course, the procedures are a set of documents that are developed to provide details regarding step-by-step implementation of the intent of the board-approved policies. And having said that, I would say generally speaking, in my opinion, the policy statements are very poor. Ed, you said it yourself, and I agree with you 100%. The policy statements need to be well designed. I'm just going to use one example for you, and that's policy 6.1. This one policy statement, which includes 3 paragraphs, covers 4 very detailed procedures. And policy 6.1 states A, equal employment opportunity, which basically says that the college will not break the law in terms of discriminating against protected classes. And that's essentially says that the college is going to follow the letter of the law, not discriminate on the basis of race, religion, color, national origin, those types of protected areas, which we know that the college will not break the law and they will not discriminate item B under this is best candidate. There's just one sentence there. It is the goal of LCCC to utilize competitive hiring approaches to identify and retain the best employees for each position. This process will utilize internal and external searches. Well, I would ask the board, what do you mean by competitive hiring practices? I would ask you, how can the college be competitive and attract best possible candidates when the college does not provide any form of job security or due process? And of course, I'm referring to at-will status for classified staff employees and even the provisional faculty status for new faculty on contract. And then item C under there is employment and employee categories. And it says the Board of Trustees of Laramie County Community College through the president shall define the types of employment positions at the college and establish classification system for categorizing its employees, types, and determining the appropriate employment relationship. Well, the board needs to put some meat into that, because according to this and the procedures that go along with this, the administrator has the authority to essentially put 40% of its employees on at-will status. And we know what at-will means. They can get fired at any time for any reason. And although I know that says, well, that has to go through a process, technically it means the employee does not have any security, does not have any due process, and will not have any recourse if someone who is over them decides they're going to get fired. Well, I ask you as the board, do you want to give the administration the authority to do this, or do you want to put some language in your policies that states that you're going to provide security for employees and give them due process and some form of property right in the event they get hired at the college, rather than to put these employees in a position where they come to work in fear each day that they're going to get fired? How are you going to encourage creativity, challenge them to do the best they can if they're only coming to work for fear that they're going to get fired and only want to do what they have to do in order not to make a mistake? It's not a good environment, and it's not a good idea. So that's all I have to say about that particular policy. And this is consistent with the rest of them. I think the board, as Ed said, needs to have well-designed policies. And as Mr. Hacker said, what you have now, if the administration goes along with the procedures that are supposedly mirroring these policies, you're going to be in big trouble. You might think it's going to be convenient and easy to fire employees that aren't doing their job, but in the long run, it's only going to make things more difficult. Oh, and one more thing. The procedure on the paid leave donation process, that's a bad idea too. The college with the sick leave bank procedure was the envy of other institutions. I can tell you that from experience. And if there's a fear of having too much time in the sick leave bank because of the liability, all you have to do is put a cap on how much time is going to be kept in the bank. It's not complicated. It's very simple, and it's the bank policy is, or procedure is very easy to administer. It's very objective. It's not time consuming. It's easy, and it's the most fair and equitable way to treat employees who have long-term illnesses or injuries that their sick leave balance does not cover. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any others who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Arun Goyal. I'm here as a member of the community, and I would like to speak as a community member. My observations, but I would like to seek an opinion from which are non-confidential observations. Is that reasonable?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure what Dr. Goyle's asking. Can,
What I'm asking, if I, in my last 6-8 months of being a member of the staff on this school, if I made certain observation or I know about certain things, and during the conversation, if the comment comes in, which is a non-confidential in nature,
Could you tell us what the subject is, please?
subject will be related to this.
Okay, thank you.
And which Joe has
Go
already
ahead.
mentioned.
Sure, please proceed.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, would you please explain who you are? I'm sorry.
Oh, you don't know me?
No,
I think we met. I'm Arun Goyal.
okay.
I was hired here as a Dean of Math and Science, and currently I'm a Dean of Special Projects, and right now I'm on leave.
Okay, please proceed.
Again, I will bring back the same thing, what I had said a few minutes ago, when in my first comment about students. I didn't hear it's still a student. Anyway, today is the 5th of March, and in the last 6 months, must have at least talked to 50 students. And I'm going to bring this point to this HR policies in a moment, if you allow. Because it's very important as a community member to talk about students.
Are you speaking about your students as a community member or as an instructor?
No, I'm talking about community member.
Okay.
I said I'm talking only as a community member, nothing to do with.
No, I know, but would you have my only question is, would you have students if you are a community member? Go
No,
on.
I'm just talking to people in hallways and mall and whatever.
Okay, fine, please
That's all
proceed.
the same. Because that is my passion. That's what I do.
Perfect.
And I know that I've been to some of your meetings, I've seen your Apple iPads. I don't see them today here, but I see the Apple over there. And if I see you as a board member of Apple, and I see Joe as a Steve Jobs, he's alive, who used to be my friend, unfortunately. And we used to hang out at the same place in India. Anyway, so if a student met me today in March, he asked me a simple question. And he asked me a simple question that we lost 20% students in the last 2 years.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We lost about 20% students in the last 2 years. We raised the 4% tuition, which we claim to give it back to students as a scholarship. And if you do all the math and calculations, we have put together a new budget proposal to the board, or whosoever. So practically, we have increased the budget by 125%. And as a student who has been here for last 2 years, I've been given run around like crazy. And last 2 years, I have not received a single help in this school, which made my life anything positive. And for the last 2 years, I've been running around like crazy. And Rich knows about each and everything about it. And Rich was trying to help him out. Rich is running around with him. Rich is trying to help him. He was told 10 times different thing, and he was crying in the mall in front of me. So here what I'm saying to you, requesting you, is starting this point. We are spending all this time in this school, calling up that we are student focused. Our students crying in the mall. For 2 years, he's been trying to get a very little thing done. We don't care about our students. Rather, we raise all these budgets, claim that we are getting a scholarship, but really we are funding our administrator's salary by that, doing so. That's the reality of the issue. So think about it. All this HR policy and everything that we are trying to create here, just ask yourself a question tonight. In the last 3 years or last 2 years, what this school has done. If I started 2 years ago as a student in this school, 2 years ago, after Joe came on board, what this school has done for me, and I'm going to graduate it tomorrow, in a few months' time, that has made any difference in my life, that I can take tangible in my hand, and what board has done for me, that I can take with me. But here we spend all this time, this policy change, that policy change, student center, student this, student that, fight all over the place, tell the faculty, we do the first reading, second reading, we do this and that, shove the faculty throat, we don't care about the faculty. In fact, I was very reluctant to say that because I have heard by a member of the President Council saying somewhere, we don't care about the faculty. We are going to get it, shove it through their throat. After the first reading, second reading, get it through the member is going to go through all these procedures. And let the faculty do whatever they want. This is just a formality. I was hurt when I heard that because I was faculty member one day. And I was telling faculty here, I was really, really hurt that I came to this town, to this school, and I'm hearing it. People shove it through the faculty. Because I was administrator, but I was hurt. But I was just talking to Desiree, and I said, but Joe already said, this is what he's going to do. So I'm requesting to this board, take control of the policy, write the policy in the right way, think about the students. I can go through each and everything, but another thing I'm just saying to you today, we are talking about a legacy faculty, a legacy employee. Who are they? Nobody should be protected in America if you are not doing your job. It doesn't matter. And if I know as administrator, or Joe knows as administrator that this person is not going to do doing job, and if Joe is knowingly protecting that person should not be given a protection, or board should not be giving that protection, that employee, which we are doing continuously. I want to ask this question to board. If you know that some faculty member is not doing a job and not providing the quality education to our student for the last 5 years, would you be providing the protection to that faculty member? And you know that. You will be doing the developmental education for last 5 years or 20 years. You are still ripping off our students every day and not listening to the people who really can do things because you want to do your own dream job and please faculty. Don't do it, please. These are the, and then you want to raise $25 million here for the building. For what? You don't have your own home in order. And doing all this work, anti-harassment. What anti-harassment? What this blue line says? Do we
Madam
do
Chair,
those things?
Madam Chair,
Please.
may I? Could you please be more specific?
I'm saying.
Wait.
Mhm.
May I continue? You said you wanted to speak about students, okay, and you're getting beyond that. And if you wish to make public comment, that would be fine. But your original comment, you said you're going to talk about students. So talking about students, I've been here for 1 year.
Mhm.
I got to know these individuals on this board.
Mhm.
We're not paid. We're elected individuals to do a job. And students are the #1 priority.
Mhm.
Taxpayer is the #1 priority too, taxpayer and students, but also our employees. So what we're doing about these employment procedures, policies and procedures are extraordinarily important. You're diminishing it, in my opinion, by your comments here. And I'm not going to let you get by that. I mean, talk about the students, fine. If you want to talk about something else, I think you should talk about something else at another time.
No, I'm not talking something, I'm just talking about the policy.
The other thing then I would ask, Madam Chair, that there be a time limit so that we don't.
Yeah, but it was not like time limit for other people, so it should not be for me. Don't do discrimination against me.
May I ask a question? Are you going to comment during the other comment period of the
No,
board
but
meeting?
first I'm commenting.
Is this your comment
It's
time?
about comment about these policies.
But
So
will
I'm
you
going to
also
the-
be commenting
Of
during the
course.
open comment
But that will
period?
be a different story. That is nothing to do with this one. So we are talking about, let's go point by point, by the policy by policy. So we have an existing non-vacant position policy. We let the employee go without any taking control of it. LCC has lost a lot of value, policy, a lot of other things. I'm not going to go into any details. But who is responsible for it? We know it, we lose it, and does the board have the control? No. So what I'm requesting you, board needs to take control of writing policy. I'm going to make point by point, and detail we can go whenever you want to invite me back.
Madam Chair.
Um, Trustee Kilty would like to speak.
You've said that the board needs to take control of writing policy, but we already know that.
What I'm just saying, what I was hearing, what has been written is going to go first reading, second reading, and then whatever is going to push through the, whatever. So I'm just saying, the policy has to be in place so college doesn't lose those NSF, sorry, I should not say all those. I will not go there. Employment separation, we need to know what employment separation is, where college is going to go or not. We need to really look into very carefully. All those things are happening in this school, in my tax dollars. What is happening on anti-harassment procedure? The whole blue page, are we really doing it?
Dr. Boyle, could I ask?
Yes,
a
Kevin, go ahead.
question here? The topic of the current discussion is commentary related to policies and procedures. The things that you've been speaking to the present point have been to do more with quality of certain faculty members on the campus.
No,
Yes.
no, I didn't say that.
I did hear you say that, and also you were
What I'm
speaking
saying-
about the students. When
No,
we're
I'm saying I
talking
started
about
from a
policy,
I
procedure,
started from a student point of view because student, that is where the most important thing is student. Everybody comes second. First comes student. The student is our business. Without a student, we don't exist here. That is how I started because I met a student today. And that's
Okay.
how the student came.
I-
And then I'm
excuse me.
going through the policy.
I would like to stop this conversation, and I appreciate you being at the podium. We are losing our audience, and we are losing time. So I will let you speak during the rest of the meeting on your personal items. So if you would like to present me with a written document, I would be more than happy to receive it, and I will share it with the
I
board.
mean, this will be a very clear cut of this board cutting me off compared to other people who were not told to cut off and discriminate me openly being a colorful person.
Not at
I'm
all.
just giving you open statement here.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts on that.
So
Thank
it's up
you.
to you. You want me to cut me off? I will be happy to. I'm
I
giving
am,
the statement.
I am colorblind.
That's okay. So you can be, but your action is very clearly colorful.
Okay, let me speak with the rest of the board. How does the rest of the board feel? Would you like to hear more?
Madam Chair, can we take about a 5-minute recess?
I think that's a great idea. We will take a 5-minute recess, and we will re-adjourn at 10 minutes after 9.
Reconvene.
Reconvene. Dr. Goyal, you may resume your discussion, but I want to caution you, if you stray from the policy and procedure, we will no longer have you be at the podium, but you may come back during the regular public comment period
I will
at the
stay
end.
with this document.
Yes, as
That's
long
what
as
you
you're
want?
speaking about the policy and procedure and not about
Anything else?
faculty or students or the budget.
I'll
or-
stay with this.
Yes, if you stay with that, but if we find that you stray, then we
No,
will
you will
ask
not find
you
that.
to conclude. Thank you.
So, your policy procedure number 6.2P, I would like you to take a very good look at this blue area that you have printed. Take a good look, and also I want you to be very careful when we write all these policy procedures. In here, this document and any other document, LCCC doesn't plagiarize anything because we hold very high standards for our students not to plagiarize anything. So make sure that these documents don't have a plagiarized material. I'm not accusing anybody, but just want to bring it to attention of the board.
Dr. Goyle?
Yeah.
You said that this pertains to anything that's in blue in this section?
So that particular was on my document, that was given to me. Confidentiality, 6.0, 7.0, retaliation, confidentiality. That portion of that, page 3 of 6.2, oh, 6.2.P. Look at extremely carefully and look at the federal laws and state laws. Oh, yeah. Employee grievance policy, I would very strongly suggest to this board, look this grievance policy very, very carefully because the way, in my personal opinion, the way you have the procedure is outlined, but the policy that you need to really put in place, my suggestion would be that this should be a very, very strong policy in place that should be consistent with the rest of the country. What rest of the country does, all the institutions do, I think you need to be very careful that this is not somebody's personal home. LCCC is a great institution. We should keep it great by keeping it a great unbiased system. In grievance policy, I think I will strongly encourage you to please look into those great institutions and great policies on that. The procedure is different thing. The policy, if you put it right, this board will be remembered. But the way it is, this board will never be remembered. Just remember, this is my personal feeling. Reduction in workforce, reduction in force, RFI, again, look at the policy very, very carefully, what RFI is. And again, my strong request to you would be, redefine the RFI and legacy faculty, or the staff, or whatever it is. Because it's very important that in order for you to define these people, whosoever it is, it doesn't matter who anybody is, please put a student first. If a student is your mission, if we are not delivering the student that is needed, for example, if I'm just giving you this example, if a trustee Kilty is teaching a course, and that course is X, and that X course is supposed to deliver Y, and trustee Kilty is teaching 5 years continuously that course and is not delivering the content that a student needs, then I think trustee Kilty should not have legacy status. So I think I want you to really look into that scenario very, very carefully. And a lot of things, when we know that is happening, we should be really addressing those issues. And conduct and discipline is another issue here. I think it's a very, very highly gray area that you have. It's a more of a bunch of personal favors you can manipulate here is there. So please look into extremely carefully and also compare notes with some great institutions. That will be my suggestion and recommendation. And also look into the possibility when we are talking about the ranking and promotion. My suggestion would be look into the policy that this school started and how everything was evolving and how these things are shortchanged. Thank you very much.
Thank you for staying on track. We really appreciate what you had to say. Archie?
Madam Chair, Board of Trustees, I'm Archie Nestle. I teach English here at LCCC. I wanted to thank the board and Dr. Schaefer for allowing us to have lots of opportunities to make public comment on Eagle's Eye and through written comments and through this open hearing. And thank you for extending the time for us to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Archie.
Madam Trustee and Board of Trustees, I want to thank you as well for allowing me to come up here. And I wanted to follow Archie because I knew she would make it positive, and I think that's what this needs to be. And I have some specific things I would like to talk about, but you know, I do believe we all have a mission, as Don said, Trustee Erickson, that, and it's about students, and I think you all are here because of students, and so am I, and so is all the staff members that are here. And so I want to talk a little bit about the classified staff. This is somewhat bothersome to me that they don't currently have due process. Now, when I took management in college, the person who taught it taught a lot about HR because that was his passion. But so, you know, policies and procedures, as Dr. Schaefer said, there isn't a clear line. And in private practice, there tends to be more in the procedures. But you know, a public institution, I think it's appropriate that there's more in policies. I don't believe it's inappropriate to define job status and in a policy, especially at a public institution. But I want to just talk from a faculty perspective, and I'm going to talk about Mike isn't here. Mike Clark used to be our janitor in the business building and retired last year. But I'm going to pick on Mike, and I hope you don't care. He had ownership of that building. That was his building. He took pride in the fact that it was clean. When we would walk into the classroom in the morning, it was as clean as you could imagine. And the whiteboards, I use whiteboards a lot because I like to draw graphs, right? The whiteboards were clean, and you couldn't see the old writing on there. But when Mike was gone, if any of you know Mike, he played Santa Claus at Christmas time. He looks like Santa Claus. And he would take time off in December. The room wouldn't be clean. The students would be scraping, you know, drink stains off with their fingernails, and you could see the old writing on the board, and it really distracted from the learning environment. And so, you know, the other thing is that my students, they're affected by their interactions with everybody here on campus. When they walk down the hall coming to my classroom and they have somebody who says hi to them, that changes their mood. When they have somebody who doesn't, that also changes their mood. And so what I want as a faculty member is I want people to be invested in this college, to say this is my college and these are my students, as you guys have all decided to do by taking on a very hard job with no pay. You're doing it because this is your college and this is your students. And I think faculty and staff here at the college, for the most part, do that. Yeah, you know, I'll agree that there probably are some problems, and I'll agree that we probably did need to update our policies and procedures, our HR policies and procedures. But I guess what I really want to reiterate is that this is that we're dealing with people, that we want them to be the best people at the college. And I really struggle that making an employee at will with no due process is going to help us achieve that goal. I liked Rob's suggestion, I don't know about 4 years, but that there's a probation. I think that's appropriate, that we can identify a time for which we figure that we should be able to determine whether we have a good employee that we can make him the best employee, and we make that time limit for which someone's appropriate, probationary. And then after that, that they have some due process. And I know that there were some significant changes. There's now in the new set of procedures, this is 6.1.1p and 6.10p, that before somebody is terminated, they have to visit with HR and their administrator. But informing is not the same as due process, because I could inform however I want to inform. It doesn't give both sides of the story. And so I don't think that that's a big request, that everybody at some point have due process so they can take ownership in the college and ownership in our students. So that would be my plea to you, that I think we can put that in policy pretty easy. And I see Dr. Kilty has a
We'll let you
question for
finish,
me.
and then do you want to go ahead and finish,
Okay,
and
I have-
Dr. Kelty can ask his question.
I have 3 other very short things, I promise. I'm not trying to take up too much time. The one is the sick bank. I actually really find the sick bank a good idea. And I think Bruce Curl said it very well, that, I like this idea of not having to ask somebody for their time, not having to try to deserve it, to try to determine whether somebody deserves that time. And I don't know that it's appropriate that be handled. I know the state does it that way, and I know people who work there, and they hate it when they get these emails. Can you give 10 days? Or, they don't, and sometimes they don't even know if they should. They don't know how the person has used their time. There are people who believe that, the sick day is a welfare day, and I can take a day off once a month. We don't know those things, and I think the sick bank is good. And I think the current procedure calls for a cap on how much you can use, and so after that amount you wouldn't be able to use anymore. The reduction in force, I don't think moving it from 85 to 30 or 60 days is a huge cost to the institution. I think that leaving at 85 days isn't a huge cost to the institution compared to, could you imagine being ripped from your job and 3 months is, we're talking about people, and there has to be some, we have to take some responsibility for that. I don't know that that's accomplishing much. And the grievance, I appreciate that Dr. Schaefer changed that consistent 7 days. I actually would like to see it at 10 days, but those are my comments. My biggest one is about due process for classified staff. So.
Thank you, Jeff. Trustee Kelly?
This isn't actually a question for Jeff, but it's a comment that I made, and I don't remember the context some years ago. But when I was at Washington State University in the late 1990s and early 2000s, I was a recruiter, and I went around to probably every community college in the Northwest, at least every community college in Western Oregon and Washington. And I had come from LCCC, so I still had a pretty clear view of LCCC at the time, and my view was not inaccurate. When I came back here, I thought that LCCC was probably the cleanest campus that I saw anywhere, any campus that I've ever visited. So there is no doubt that we've got just some excellent classified staff. But I kind of like to divorce this business of all of these work rules necessarily being related to trying to get rid of employees that don't perform. And this probationary period is a really important part of that. The 3-year probationary period on faculty should have been enough to evaluate faculty. We never let anyone go in that probationary period she got whacked in there, and that's a discussion for another time. But at any rate, this probationary period for classified staff and then giving them property rights, if you find out you got somebody who's a really darn good employee, and, you know, I don't want to say that the janitorial staff exemplify every classified staff person on the campus, but they're darn good. And they care a lot about the college. And, you know, I take Rob's suggestion and yours very seriously here. So I just wanted to say that this is a darn good staff here. And running pretty thin usually, too.
Thank you, Jess. Wait, we have someone at the back. Could she come first, please? Ladies first. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, I'm Carolyn Cuestas. I work here at LCCC.
Please restate your name. I did. Carolyn?
Carolyn Cuestas.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having this open forum. And I don't know if I can be like everyone else and say I'm representing my place as an employment or a community, because I am both. I am a community member and I work here at LCCC, so I can't define myself one way or the other. I'm both. I want to thank all the faculty for speaking up for classified staff, and I also want to say that I am classified staff. And I want to say that I am honored that I get a piece of this policy and procedure packet as a legacy employee. And the thing I want the board to please consider is that I've been here for a long time. I love what I do. I am an alumni of LCCC. I think the college is great. I've seen a lot of changes. And I want to say that the piece of this I have a problem with is if I've been here for so many years and I'm a legacy classified staff, and I decide that there's a position that I feel that I'm more qualified for, and I want to transfer to another position. And in this packet, it states, eloquently spoken by our past HR person, which is Bruce Curl. If I may read it, it says, it is the goal of LCCC to utilize competitive hiring approaches to identify and retain the best employee for each position. This process may utilize either internal and or external searches. I, for one, am going to tell you right now, as a legacy classified employee, that 6.1.1p, I would really like for the board to take a special look at. Or it says that if I indeed decide to transfer, and it says accepts a promotion as an at-will classified position, that's going to change my legacy status. So it doesn't matter how many years I've dedicated to this college. If I see a position that I use the term promotion loosely, that then I become an at-will classified person. And there goes all of my due process and all of my rights as a legacy classified staff. And that would deter me from moving laterally or moving up in another position as the best hiree for LCCC. I'm not going to jeopardize my legacy status to go to an at-will position. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? So what you're telling me is that if you had a decision to get a higher position and a raise,
yes, ma'am,
that better uses your talents, where you could make a bigger difference with students and get a higher salary, you would turn that down to avoid being in an at-will position?
Yes, ma'am.
Seriously, you would do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You know why? Do you want to know why? in my personal opinion, is because I'm old, Brenda. I'm looking towards retirement. You know, I'm working here and dedicating myself to this college as the college has dedicated itself to me. And I'm not going to jeopardize my retirement so that I can get a little bit more money. No.
So may I ask another question? So your underlying assumption is that when you become an at-will employee, you will get fired?
No, ma'am, it's the risk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, trustee Coe.
Caroline, if suppose we had a 4-year probationary period and then property rights after that, would you be willing to change for that? Would you be willing to take that risk under those circumstances?
I probably don't think a 4-year probationary period is necessary. No, if you would even if you would shorten that probationary period and then have property rights, yes, I would. Thank you.
very much.
And thank you, everybody, and thank you, faculty, for your support.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, when I attended the staff forum, I thought there was some discussion on this. Could there be some clarification? Because I came away from that meeting thinking that if a person were to have a lateral change or a promotion, that they wouldn't lose their status.
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, the conversation was under two circumstances where an existing employee, or as we're defining a legacy employee, which is just a way we're trying to define those people that are here now and will have rights that will not go away as a result of this legacy employee. There are two instances where they may change to another position, and basically my comments were based on the way these are drafted now, is that if the administration were to move an employee, if it was done at the administration's thing, so we did a lateral administrative move for whatever reason, or if the administration were to riff a position and decide to move an individual, if the administration makes the change, we could not and would not take away a legacy employee's property rights. The way they're written now is if a legacy employee, and so this is where we differentiate what we're talking about as positions, not current employees. But if there's an existing open position that is open for competition and anyone applies for that, whether it's an existing employee or an external employee, and they're given that position, the parameters around the employment for that position stick according to the policies and procedures as they're drafted. So yes, the way I described it was that if there is an employee, and Carolyn's got a good example, if she were to see that there's another job and I apply for it internally and I'm offered it, I take on the employment relationship as defined by policy and procedure with the new policy and procedure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, Madam Chair. Let's see. My name is Juan Antonio Bernabeu. I'm the Spanish instructor here at the college, and I guess I'm also a legacy employee by the definition in the policy. Most of the concerns I have, Caroline has expressed them very clear in regards to risk versus staying, do your job the best you can and call it good. To me is a reality I have to live with. I have 4 children. I have been here in the community for the last 10 years, and I am very heavily invested in everything that happens in this community, not just as a faculty member anymore, but also as something else for my church, my community, the many different organizations I belong to, and so forth. Let me tell you some great news. This morning we received a report that our success rate is going up. How is that possible with decreasing enrollment? I will submit to you that's because of the quality we have of employee at LCCC. There is no other reason. There is a drive and passion in every employee here that is trying to excel. It may not be the way that some people in this room may think about excelling in publishing, excelling up, promoting the college outside the state of Wyoming. but they are excellent. They are excellent because they have an invested interest. Also, I would like to submit that after reading the promotion ranking that has been proposed, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned for the same reason that Ed Moser described before. The devil is in the details, in the procedures, and who is to implement those procedures and how. Now, Kevin make allusion to the past. I was there. I was there in your confrontations with this administration. I was there. I was there when I hear why, very eloquently from your mouth. It was because you wanted people to be involved in what's going on at the college and be part of it and know where we're heading and so forth. I'm glad that this process is taking place. It's giving us a chance that, sincerely, we didn't have before. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate respect that has been shown to me when I say whatever I needed to say. I like that. I'm looking forward to tomorrow to the Faculty Senate. Sincerely, I don't agree with Rob Van Cleef in this one. I don't think the faculty has been polled in regards to where they stand, in regards to the policies and procedures yet. There's research to tomorrow, and we'll see that in the process. I'm very concerned about due process for the staff. Has been said many, many times. I want to emphasize that. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you take the due process from them? I don't understand that part. I thought you were proud of who we are and that you value employees. That was what our EQUIP report said, that we need to value employees. So I don't understand why the due process is being taken away. In regards to the other policies and procedures, I'm going to reserve my comments for later because I'm still reading them. Now, I would like to make a comment in regards to how this whole process is affecting me. It's taking me away from what I love the most, which is making a difference for individuals that are in front of me every single day. Now, besides reading these policies, I have other things to do, and I take them seriously because, like many people here, I want to be the best for that individual, to make a difference in that individual that is in my chair right now. And I hope to be doing that for many, many years to come. Now, there has been a lot of speaking about fear. I will submit you don't know what fear is until you see your father hiding in the closet because people are looking for him just to shoot him in the head. I have lived that. I know what fear is. I cannot give you that power. They took it away from me. At that moment, I know what fear is. So I am concerned. I'm very, very concerned about what this whole policy does to relationship with you, the Board of Trustees, with my president, and with the other employees. Now, maybe my concern is unfounded. I said to President Schaefer and Dr. Fierro that time will tell. The good thing about policies and procedures, like it is in my profession, is that they are subject to change. If we don't believe in that, I don't know what we're doing in education because education is changing. And we need to change. We need to see things different. So as we look forward to this process and as we look to these policies and procedures, I ask the board, please leave room for improvement. Leave room so not everything is set in stone. That there will be a time and a place to review this every so many years and make sure that we are really doing what we're supposed to be doing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Juan Antonio. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hello. Hi. Leah Noonan. I teach here at the college for a number of years now. I did have a question first. Will there be another opportunity to speak about this, the policies and procedures, as it is getting so late?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'd be happy to address that question. You have, again, this is not even your formal first reading of the policies and procedures. Consultative feedback is still open until the 10th, so you will hear them at your March 19th meeting, and at the time you'll have public comment there as well, Leah. And then again at their second reading, which will be the first week in April, I think. So yes, there will be additional opportunities for public comment before the board.
In that case, I would like to say very, very briefly that I certainly support what Carolyn said. I thought Rob had an excellent idea. I think 4 years is way too long for professional staff or for classified, thank you, classified staff. And I think it's, if those things were to be changed, such as if someone who has been a noted employee at this college for a number of months, years, up to someone beyond my pay grade to decide that, then perhaps they would not need the same length of time for probation as someone who was totally new to the college. I merely mentioned that as a thought. Also, I agreed about the sick bank. I had some very specific questions about different procedures, but I will not take your time with them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
And Madam Chair, members of the board, if I may, for the audience, if there are additional questions, comments, things like that, Eagle's Eye is still open. I'm happy to take those via email, however folks want to get those to me. So, consultative feedback is still open until the 10th. So, hopefully they send those along.
Sure. Is there anyone else who would like to speak here? If not, I want to thank everyone for being so engaged and for having the courage to come to the podium and speak about how you're feeling and what you're thinking about how to improve our college. I really appreciate it, and I know that this board does as well. So we'll still have some time, and so please come back. Thank you very much. Yes.
I would just like to reemphasize that what Leah said, if we get that information, don't just wait till then to comment. If you could provide that to us, as Dr. Shaver indicated. I know some other board members are looking on Eagle's Eye, and I could look there at the forum in the comments there, and others have approached me or given me messages, and please continue to do so. Then I had a couple of comments I wanted to make a little bit, but I'll wait to see what that is.
And Rachel, I saw that you wanted to speak. Do you want to wait as well? Okay, thank you. I think we're going to conclude this portion of the meeting and move on to additional items, which are historical list of board motions. And the next meeting will be on March 19th. And I believe it should be in this very room because we should have quite a few people attending. Next is new business. I will make this very brief. I saw an article in the Trustee Quarterly about free legal services for students, and it was quite a good idea, and I've already presented it to Dr. Shafer, and he's going to look into that. Next, we have a period of public comment and anything that has not been on the agenda.
Madam Chair, members of the
Yes.
board, you do have a section for new business, and I
Oh,
don't know,
I'm
based
sorry.
on Trustee Mosier's comments, if you had something you want to discuss under new business before you move to the public comment.
Okay, I thought I said new business, but I'm sorry. I didn't.
I just wanted to quickly remind the board that if you have some comments relative to legislative action or updates that you have been able to participate in issues for the next WAC meeting, which is on March 30th. I'm not planning on attending that. It's in Powell. But please share with us any information you may wish to have regarding something you can look forward to the entire trustees.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think we should all be aware that at the last Wyoming Association of Trustees, the board elected our trustee Mosier as the president. So I think we're going to have good leadership. I think we're going to have good leadership. He's already demonstrated that at the first meeting that he chaired. It went well. And I really look forward to working with you, trustee Mosier, next year and the year after that.
Congratulations, Ed. Thank you, Don. Any other new business? If not, then we have public comment at this time. Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and member of board. name is Arun Goyal. I am employee of the college, on leave right now. My role was, when I came to the college, the Dean of Math and Science, and then moved to Dean of Special Projects. And I have shared with Madam Chair, with you, and the President, some information regarding act of a member of the President's Cabinet, breaking the federal and state law. Also regarding the Whistleblower Act. Also I've shared with you the gun violence and all those issues. And so far they have not been dealt by you as the chair. And I requested you to please consult with the board members and report to the local police that have not been taken care. I encourage you to please protect the student of this campus. Report to the police appropriate thing. You have all the information. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any more public comment? If there being none, may I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? This board meeting is adjourned, and thank you for coming.